East. Feels good to be back, Tone. After a day of rest and relaxation and just trying to get this laryngitis out of my system, it's going away slowly, Tone DeShields, but this is the best my voice has felt in at least 5 days.
Yeah, man, it's that season, right? There's so many things going around. I was just sick in December, the week prior to Christmas, and I was hoping I'd be ready for the holidays, but luckily, I was able to bring myself up to it. So yeah, man, it's all about knowing your body, man, and just knowing what you can, what you're willing to handle, and again, things are going around at this time of year, so it's important to take care of yourself.
Yeah, so one of the things I did yesterday, I'm normally a guy who I'm active, right? So I just thought shut it down, no running, no trying to break a sweat, do anything like that. I watch a lot of film anyway. I watched a ton of film yesterday. And we were talking about this backstage. One of the things I've noticed when it comes to I'm trying to think of the best word for it, the reviled Jonathan Gannon, because it seems like everybody likes to blame him for the Eagles' problems, just like everybody likes to blame Doc Rivers for the Sixers' problems, because let's be honest, people don't know what they're talking about. So
I'll admit I get emotional and blame Doc Rivers for their problems.
Do you blame Doc Rivers for James Harden missing 2 free throws though?
Oh no, of course not those kind of things, but
So anyway, so watching their coverage on first, second, and third down, right, in the first half of the Saints game. And I'm thinking to myself, and I've noticed a trending pattern here. The Eagles usually switch to man on third down. And I'm going, why are they doing that and why are they playing so far back?
I'm with you. It's like you're playing man, but you're so far away from the opponent, the man is kind of obsolete. I get what you mean. And I think this is the mentality that Jonathan Gannon has instilled in these guys, right? Not being so close to the line of scrimmage. But then you mentioned also second half, they started playing, a little bit tighter, a little closer to the line of scrimmage, being more physical with the receivers. And things change. This team is more physical than what people realize. This team is much more talented in man than Jonathan Gannon gives them credit for. And I was talking about this previously, and this team has to utilize the talent they have while they have the opportunity. This is a golden opportunity for the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, they're dealing with injuries, but they have a chance, as good as anyone else, to win the Super Bowl. And the last thing you want is to leave anything out on the field. You want to be as aggressive as possible that makes sense. You don't want to be passive in a situation where it calls for you to kind of dictate the pace, dictate the energy or the momentum of a game. I just feel like sometimes with the Gannon's defense, it's too reactive instead of being proactive.
Doesn't it feel like too this team is really good at adjusting at halftime? It feels like the best way to get to this Eagles team is early on in the game when you got the scripted plays. Obviously, we always hear about the 15 scripted plays, but a lot of the scripted plays do come in the first quarter, early in the second quarter. It feels like that's like the best way to get this team, because whatever Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon do in that 12-minute halftime, it seems to work most of the time.
But why is their script more effective than your script? You get what I mean? Like that's an issue for me.
It's an issue for me too, because I am not like, and again, this is just rewatching the game. Pass, 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 pass. Why did this team take so long? And I get Miles Sanders was wearing a knee brace. I get his knees bothering him. But it wasn't that big of a concern.
To him, at least.
Yeah, thank you. It wasn't that big of a concern to him and to them because Trey Sermon was not active.
I think they give way too much credit to Kenny Gainwell. They hold him in this regard that hasn't really panned out to me. And I like Kenny Gainwell. I think he's a talented guy, and I think he could be a contributor on a championship team, if used properly. And I just feel that this organization, this coaching staff more so, they put Kenny Gainwell on this pedestal as if he can do no wrong. And I'm trying to figure out, you have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and you got Trey Sermon, a young guy, not an old guy, a young guy who is still trying to prove himself in this NFL. Why not mix and match him with a Miles Sanders, or mix and match him with Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell, or even throw Boston Scott in the mix? Like, Trey Sermon is a very physical running back, and he's a great change of pace back, if you ask me. You know, I'm not understanding what their logic is. I think this coaching staff is more finesse than physicality. That's just the bottom line.
I would agree with that because it doesn't seem like, even though the Eagles can be physical, at least on the offensive line, that's how Jeff Stoutland likes to present themselves. You are right, though, with the finesse part. And it's weird, right? Because you got A.J. Brown, who I think is a very physical wide receiver, as you saw in that touchdown on Sunday. You got Devonta Smith, who does show his physicality when he's at the line. Dallas Goedert. But with the running backs, it's different. And I don't get it. Like, Miles Sanders could be a straight runner that can get a 60, 70-yard run at any time. And I think that's what they like about Kenny Gainwell, is the knack for the explosive play, even though we haven't seen it that much this year. And it's weird how Kyle Shanahan didn't believe in Trey Sermon. So now it feels like there's this aura around him.
Well, think about the way Kyle Shanahan uses his running backs. He likes to use his running backs in the passing game, and he likes to get creative with things like that. And his running backs are more finesse than power. You think about the guys he's had. He has Christian McCaffrey right now. I believe they had Raheem Mostert at one point.
They did.
And then they also had Tevin Coleman. Their running back room has always been, speed, scat backs that can catch the ball from the backfield, elusive guys. Trey Sermon is more so that north-south, power back, that one cut, get physical, put your face in the dirt type of running back. And I guess he just wasn't a fit over there. But with this offensive line, see, I think the Eagles want to portray like they're really physical, but they don't dictate the physicality most of the time.
They let other teams do it, and then it feels like they know when to get physical. It's just they don't do it all the time, and I think that's the issue.
Yes, exactly. And in this playoff, you want to beat teams up. You want to beat them into submission. You want to make them remember that game that they played against you. And there's so many injuries going on, and it's beginning to limit the way they call plays. And my mindset is, this team is deep. This coaching staff needs to step their weight up in terms of their creativity, and needs to step their weight up in terms of how they deploy these guys.
Don't you think, though, they're trying to hide some things for the postseason because they know that they're in? And I know the Dallas game, you don't want to give anything away because there's a really good chance you're going to play them again. But the Saints game, do you feel like they needed to open up the bag of tricks? Or maybe the guy that they used for the bag of tricks just wasn't available?
I don't know, man. There's been a certain air of arrogance these past few weeks.
Yep.
With the way they've approached play calling. They aren't creative enough to keep Jalen out of harm's way. Like that Bears game just sticks out to me so badly. I don't understand how Miles Sanders only has like 12 touches, 10 touches on the game, if I'm not mistaken. And then early in that game, I think he only touched the ball like one time or two times in the first half, kind of similar to the Saints game.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I haven't criticized this coaching staff much this year because I haven't needed to. But the last couple,
I kind of just started to. Like these past few weeks, I've been starting to.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a narrative that's being pushed. I think it's a legit concern, honestly. And do I think Jalen Hurts hides a lot of their stuff? No, I don't, because it doesn't work like that. I just think you're right. You're seeing the arrogance, though, even in the press conferences. Like, we can win with Gardner Minshew. Well, no, you can't. You can't win with Gardner Minshew.
He's shown that you can't. So
that's the Chip Kelly arrogance, right? Oh, I can win with anybody. No, that's not it. I'm sorry you didn't draft Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni. I'm sorry that he may not be who. I don't want to say that's not who Nick Sirianni wants. I think they obviously want Jalen Hurts, but I'm sorry you didn't draft him, or he's not the guy, or You know what I mean? Sometimes it feels like, oh, this guy is good, and we didn't think he was going to be this 2 years in.
I don't think anybody did.
No.
And Nick Sirianni, you never know, man. He has this love affair with Phillip Rivers and Andrew Luck. Excuse me. That's clearly his kind of quarterback. Shane Steichen is the one that was able to craft up this offense with Jalen Hurts being mobile and, getting creative with the RPO, things like that. That's kind of how that turned out. Remember, Nick Sirianni was calling plays early on, and he had Jalen dropping back like 30 to 40 times. And then Shane Steichen came into play. He dialed that back, started running the ball more. So it begs the question. We know Shane Steichen historically is not afraid to run the ball. But at the same time, you're starting to see this pass-happy mentality creep its way back in. Is Nick Sirianni starting to become more hands-on as the season progresses in the play calling?
That's what I'm wondering too. Or if they've tried some things with Nick Sirianni being more hands-on because they only need to win 1 of 3 games. Do we go back to seeing Shane Steichen again on Sunday because Jalen Hurts is back as the quarterback? By the way, I totally expect Jalen Hurts to play this week.
Absolutely, and he participated in Wednesday's walkthrough. He was listed as limited on the injury report, and like you, I agree. He has to play, if you ask me. And also, a better part of my mind makes me believe that this injury isn't as bad as we may think it is. I just believe, and we know, right? The Philadelphia Eagles have been historically very cautious, at least in the Nick Sirianni era, right? They've been historically very cautious with not just injuries, but they've been really cautious with their players' health and how they deploy them and how much action they get, even in the offseason and so on and so forth. So I think Jalen could have played last week against the Saints. I also think Nick Sirianni got a little arrogant and said, yeah, I could win with Gardner Minshew, but tried to send out the same offensive game plan he would with Jalen Hurts with Gardner Minshew.
Does it
That
feel
doesn't make
like
any sense?
Does it feel like Infinity War, where we have blood to spare? So they used it the last 2 games, and now it's okay. We're gonna bring in our big dogs, and we're gonna take this thing seriously because you kind of have to.
Yeah, you have to take it seriously. This, I don't want to say I've hit the panic button, but I've gotten to a point where this isn't about talent anymore. This isn't about how many bullets the Philadelphia Eagles have in the gun. This isn't about that anymore. Historically, we've always questioned, damn, do they have enough to compete with these teams? Do they have enough to compete with those teams? I don't know if they're a little weak here. This team is deep, and this team can compete with the best of them. I firmly believe that from a talent perspective. The only things that give me cause to pause going into the playoffs, and I hate that it's this, is obviously health. But even beyond that, the team is deep enough. I have a genuine concern with this Eagles coaching staff and their inability to coach through adversity. I struggle to believe that they can push the right buttons at the right time. Similar to that 2017 Super Bowl team. That's what made that coaching staff so special. They knew how to maximize what they had at that given time. You saw what they did with Nick Foles, and on top of that, they just knew what buttons to press at a particular time. And they truly understood the moment. They understood momentum. Like, for example, really quickly, and I'll let you respond. Doug Peterson in that Super Bowl, there was no other way to call that game. I watched that game back so many times. He couldn't have called that game any better, but also if he made one decision differently, they lose that game. He played that game like he was never going to be there again. Or he called that game like he was never going to be there again. And I just have a hard time believing this coaching staff can put their egos aside and just say, you know what, this is what we have to do. Regardless of what we want to do, this is what we have to do, and it will lead to success.
So I don't know if you ever read Doug Pearson's book.
I haven't. I wanted to, but I haven't.
Yeah, so that's basically exactly what he did. He said, I don't know if I'm going to get here again. I don't know what the situation is. I'm going up against Bill Belichick. And a lot of people were conservative against him. He said, I'm going all out. We're going to do whatever we can to win this game. And if we get blown out, so be it. I'm doing it my way. And he did that in the NFC Championship game too. He just went balls to the wall, and it worked for him. And maybe New England should have caught that. But to add to your original point here, and I'm glad you brought up 2017. I remember everybody being worried after that 6-0 loss to the Cowboys. And I'm like, this game don't mean anything, right? Like, he played backups. And I don't know. I always felt confident that whole year, even going into the divisional round. I'm just like, okay, these guys will figure it out when they have to.
Right.
I think this team is good enough to do that too. But I just don't like the arrogance of it. I don't like we can win with any quarterback or we can win with anybody on the field. Well, no, you clearly can't, because I think the 2017 Eagles would have taken care of business and beaten the Cowboys, if you want to be quite honest with me. I don't know. I don't think they toy around. They wanted to get this. You could tell in that locker room last week, they wanted to win that game. They wanted to get this thing done and over with and kind of rest up in Week 18. They don't have the luxury of doing that anymore. I still think they're going to wrap everything up and everything's going to be okay, which is kind of what I wanted to ask you, though, Tone. I know that a lot of the fans have, I don't want to say a lot. I would say maybe it's 50-50 split. They've been panicking. Are you fearing anything? Are you panicking? Or is it just like, just take care of business against a team that really has nothing to play for this week?
I fear us. I fear the coaching staff's arrogance, like we've been talking about. But also, just referencing that 2017 team again and comparing it to now, the Eagles have entered the playoffs with a lack of momentum before. In the Super Bowl year, they didn't enter with the most momentum, or they didn't enter as the hottest team. They were considered to be the underdog. And we have our guy Kevin Bullard behind the scenes. We're going to bring him up very soon. I just want to get this point off. We'll go to break, Jeff. Ultimately, the Eagles have entered the playoffs without momentum before. So I'm not necessarily concerned about the losing streak, because I think the losing streak can potentially be a blessing in disguise. Just as overconfidence is deadly, it can be as deadly as having no confidence. So I'm glad this team kind of had that moment of clarity, like, oh, anybody can get touched in this NFL. Sometimes when you're winning so much, it's easy to get lost in the clouds and forget the details and, not pay attention to your keys. Losing forces you to revisit your flaws. And as a team and as a coaching staff, they've had to revisit some flaws these past few weeks. So I'm curious to see how it pans out. I'm curious to see how they handle this Giants game with Jalen Hurts coming back. I think we, like you and I said, we agree that he's going to be back. He has to play in this game. There's no way I'm giving Gardner Minshew another opportunity to blow this thing. And that's just how my mind works. So you guys continue to smash that like button, continue to stay engaged. We have our resident Giants fan, Kevin Bullard, coming on the screen in a few minutes. This has been Good Morning NFC East with Jeff Kerr. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II. Keep it locked, you guys. You don't want to miss this.